you need that social time with people every now and then, especially if they're your clients. If you have coffee with them, it's a meeting. If you break bread, it's history. The only way you get cast out of the tribe is if you put a really bad tweet up.
I'm very jealous, actually.
Oh, don't mind me. I'll find something to moan about. I always do.
That's the Yorkshire in you.
Isn't it just?
On today's episode of The Engaging Marketeer, I'm going to be interviewing fellow BNI member and fellow filmmaker, Tommi Murshed-Parish. Tommi is a Yorkshireman, but is currently living in the beautiful, idyllic, sunny island of Gozo, just outside Malta. And Tommi does all of his video work for his clients and his BNI meetings remotely in a hybrid chapter back in Leeds. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out.
One of the biggest things to come around on the video circuit isn't technically like visual. It's the sound quality. If V.io and Adobe Enhance or anything to go by, and by the way, you can't make up for like bad volume, then you're really buggered if no one's talking into the mic.
Yeah.
But the boost it's had on just bad BNI presentations alone, audio-wise, is staggering. I've revived things from the dead. And it's interesting how all that's complementing what, was existing.
Well, that's probably an interesting thing to start with, actually, because I saw you were advertising that as a new product, weren't you, for BNI members doing their 10-minute presentations, that they can film it themselves using any technology they've got, and you can turn that into a video. So how does that work?
Well, if you go on YouTube and I want to see an orbital gig, or any fan-filmed event, it used to be like you being framed, you used to sneak a giant camera in and it used to look awful.
Yeah.
The sound on these things is ridiculous. I can hear an orbital gig with clarity, and that's an electronic band, so when something's off with that. And if it can film a live event to a decent standard, at least enough where you'd play the whole tune for it, maybe not the entire set, I don't know, then it's saying there's a lot of room to do things with, just simple presentations where there's occasional bit of coughing or a bad microphone.
Yeah.
The sound's pretty decent. You don't need Steven Spielberg or Kubrick to rock up, or Edgar Wright.
Or Edgar Wright, yeah.
Or put the tripod, to bring the whole camera crew in. Yeah, essentially, somebody can walk in with a phone and with a tripod. And I don't mean a big tripod, like one of those little ones that sits on a table.
Yeah.
Hit record. And as long as the settings are right, and it's not that difficult to do, then any idiot can record a BNI presentation to quite decent technical standards. And if the sound's a bit not as loud because there's a person at the other side of the room, I've seen videos on TikTok where a guy giving a church sermon, right over there, sound, and it echoing across the place and it not being quite, precise. Sounds like he's wearing a clip-on mic, the before and after. So the improvement for sound, and for me, always sound is the crucial thing, because if the video's crap, you can always put slides over it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The sound is the crucial thing, and the sound's good enough, and the video's all right anyway. So in theory, anybody who's got something to say that the world wants to hear can, during a BNI presentation, make sure that the world can hear it. And a lot of the time, I don't know about you, but you've seen more. You've got a lot of presentations recorded, and I saw one getting used in Malta without your knowledge. Which says a lot for how these things can spread around.
Yeah.
So imagine that anybody, instead of only the visitor hearing a presentation, or witnessing it, suddenly somebody in Peru hears about it, or Miami, and says, I need that service, or I need to introduce you to somebody who you can clearly help. But prior to that, the only people who were going to hear about it were going to be the ones in the room. You were entirely dependent on what visitors turned up that day. We've all heard these, I can't think of a better word, but somebody used the words, fairy stories where, Cinderella stories, where suddenly it's you for the night, right? And as long as somebody invited the right visitor, you could make 50 grand for the next 5 years. And it is possible, right? It does happen. That's why we tell those stories. But it is a roll of the dice. Why wait for fate to give you what what you're looking for. Why not take a proactive approach and get it recorded so that anybody in theory could dig it out even a couple of years later and think, I need to talk to that person. People are still, imagine if, let's say that Simon Sinek was in BNI. I know he's not, but for the argument's sake, right? And he'd rocked up that morning and he'd used that flip chart and done the whole start with why speech in front of the membership. And then no one filmed it. And that was it was done. Right? That's a pretty crappy video by technical standards. And imagine no one's seen it. His reputation, all right, he could have put out a book, but it's the video that people keep coming back to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So imagine if everyone in theory is capable of the next Simon Sinek speech. I mean, all right, the odds are, depends on the quality of what you put out, but we don't have to be restrained now, in theory, by, who's in the room.
No, that's a great point, because when you do a BNI presentation or for any networking, if it's BNI, you're doing it typically once every 24, 25 weeks. If it's 24, 25 members, you might even be doing it one a year if you've got a big chapter. And if you're waiting a whole year to do it, you want to make sure you get the best use out of it and that as many people as possible can see it. So why not record it? Why not reuse it?
Well, it doesn't stop with the presentation. I mean, AI has scared a lot of people lately. But if you think that, if you think of BNI beyond like a bubble where we just pass some work amongst each other, it's actually a really good ideas machine, and a really good place to support other people with more ideas on top of what they're doing already. So, people who've got skills who can add something to it. So you could, in theory, take the text from that presentation, give it to a copywriter, sales pages, take the text from that BNI presentation, because you can download transcripts, put it through Midjourney. You've got amazing images.
Yeah.
Get somebody to make the slides, chop it up into little mini clips for YouTube. I mean, often I get in a situation where somebody comes to me and says, I've got no presentation and it's 2 weeks or even a week and I'm in trouble. And this happened to me because every time that somebody says, I can't do my presentation, I know I'm getting that phone call. I know I'm going to go, oh, I really shouldn't do this, but I'll agree to it, right? I know, because I take the chance to stand up in front of people and shoot my mouth off as a chance, not a problem. So I did this so many times. At some point, I was recording outside and thinking, I'm out of ideas. I'm struggling. What will I do? Right, okay. I went around the room. Ask me a question about my business and make sure it's something you don't know and you need an answer to. And I got so many answers, quite a lot of them. And then I just fed them to somebody in the room and just said, ask me those questions. And suddenly I had live theatre. I had video content and the room was energized because it was a live event. It wasn't me remembering things from a phone book. And suddenly when you're in that room and people are seeing questions being asked, they want to look clever. Let's face it. And suddenly they go, me, I've got a question. There's always somebody at an event who sticks their hand up because they want to look clever and ask a question, which is good. We should take advantage of that. So you got more questions. By the end of it, you got tons of video content. You got text for your website. You could put that through, again, Midjourney and come up with images related to it. You got social posts. You've got a decent length YouTube video. You can scatter that across the platforms. You can put it on your LinkedIn profile. The list is endless. Yeah,
and the thing is, I think the important thing is it's something you're doing anyway. Somebody's making this presentation anyway. You have to do this, so why not film it and repurpose it and get loads of content and loads of more eyeballs on it? Because it's no extra effort.
It goes back to that thing of whether you see doing a presentation as a problem or a chance to get known. Don't get me wrong. I've had disasters, but I get to shoot my mouth off in front of 20 odd people. Why is that a bad thing? I've got a captive audience. Take it. I'll do it every week if they ask me.
Yeah, I've actually got mine next week.
Drum roll.
Mine, yes, my presentation next week. So I will be filming it, funnily enough. I will be filming it. And it's on the same day I'm doing my comedy as well. So that's going to be interesting. I don't want to get the two presentations mixed up. Otherwise, I could offend everybody in BNI.
One of the interesting things, I did a laugh at this. If you combine your presentation with ChatGPT, so you pull the text out, and obviously, depending on what the source is, the better the result of this. So the ideal one is when you're talking about your business. You're doing a presentation video, and I've done presentation videos with people, and I pulled the text out for this. You can do it with testimonial videos. You can do it with B&I presentations as well. Depending on the source, you'll get one result will be better than the other. But everybody's looking for memory hooks. They're struggling. Why not? Why not just feed the text into ChatGPT and just say, "Give me 20 memory hooks. Pick your favorite." I know this because they've been using them in my chapter.
Yeah.
You can rewrite.
I have tried it myself for that, and it does come up with some really funny stuff. So yeah, it does work for a memory hook for B&I. So you how long have you been in B&I yourself now?
5 years.
5
Gotta
years.
sound old.
And you're a Yorkshireman. We can all hear that.
For my sins.
But you're not in Yorkshire.
No.
No, you're in as far away from Yorkshire, sort of weather-wise, as you could possibly.
This virtual background. It's very. It's
very good
detailed,
animated
isn't
background.
It?
Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Tell me about it. Tourists, everything.
So whereabouts are you, and how are you making that work?
Gozo Island. It's all remote. Originally, I went around filming everybody in person. So if somebody says, "Chester, we need to do it," I'd tell them what the hotel would be, and they'd say no, or and it'd end up being somewhere it'd end up being somewhere more local that I'd do that sort of thing, or London, because it's a bit more straightforward getting down there. So I did a lot of bits and pieces down there, but it was all dependent on whether I could make it in person. And then the pandemic happened, and I get a phone call. We need a client filming in Malta, but you're not in Malta. And I'd filmed people in Malta in person several times over. So, I'd already done this remote filming thing over Zoom with a client in Yorkshire just to test it out. And we thought, that's great. No one's going to buy it. You're buying it because you like it, but mass market, no way. They want the works. They want Christopher Nolan to come out with his gear. And we didn't think it was happening, so I just put it to bed. And then the pandemic happened, and people are saying, "I need to do some marketing. Have you got any ideas? What about this? Oh yeah, I'll have that." And that was it. And I didn't think it would take off, even when I was in Malta, at least long term. I thought it would people would insist on camera equipment afterwards, but it just lowered the bar for production value. I'm not saying it looked crap. I'm saying it looked clear enough that I could see what people were, getting across with their body language. I mean, if I was filming an interview testimonial, for example, I'd make sure everybody was in their office, not where I'm at today at the bar. I'd make sure it was clear enough. I could hear them. And even then I could improve things if it was bad. And then as long as it clears those two bars and it's framed the right way, a lot of people didn't care. I mean, if you wanted to be the next Yorkshire Water, or you wanted to be the next regional player, shall we say, then you might want to spend more money to prove that you are of the size of company where you can handle the workload that comes with it. But a lot of the time, a lot of us are solopreneurs, or we've got so many staff, or we're happy enough getting really good projects, but not too many projects. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's enough for a lot of people to have somebody, talking like we are. That's enough for people. What they want is what's in our heads, what's in the business owner's heads, what's in the client's head. What do they think of me? I want to make sure I can hear that. I want to hear what ideas are in the brain of the business owner. What advice can they offer? Why are they doing this? That aside, people aren't as fussed about production value if they're working on a certain scale.
So it's more about the story and the content than about, as you say, getting the £3,000 camera out and the giant tripod.
I mean, don't get me wrong. People have expectations if you're aiming to do a certain volume of work, right? And I emphasize the word volume, but Simon Sinek, that clip is rusty. It's got the gold standard of information in terms of how people went on to use it and how many books it sold. But in terms of technical quality, it's worse than what we're doing right now. At least where I am.
Well, you've got a pretty decent microphone in your hand there, because as I say, for anyone who's not watching this, who's listening, there's cars going right past behind you there, because you seem to be on a roundabout, and I cannot hear a single one of them.
That's largely because of Zoom. I've got to say, I've been impressed from the beginning how well it filters out noise. But it doesn't harm to have a decent microphone. And if somebody's getting a testimonial done and they're investing in a video, where they're introduced, depending on what it's worth to their business, I mean, you can get really good ones for £100. Spend a little money if you can. A lot of the time, if clients have got really bad webcams, or somebody's client has a really bad webcam and they need to do a testimonial video for one of my clients, I'll tell my client to send them a little device from Amazon where they can hold their phone in place. £15. What is it really in the grand scheme of things? And people love a present, so they start talking about you.
No, that's good advice. So, what sort of clients are you actually helping with this from Gozo?
There's a mad range to it, and I've worked with funeral directors, but from Gozo, it kind of falls into two categories. It's either coaches or consultants who do what you might describe as a very intangible thing, very hard to define, and actually the label's pretty poor, as it is in most cases, but especially in coaching. You have to really drill down to what it means, or tell a fairly detailed story. And then there's a lot of people who I might call mavericks in what otherwise might be known as very dull fields. You might think that's a pretty boring industry, but then when you meet the business owner, you go, yeah, they're a little bit different. They break the mold a little bit.
And do you ever get to interview people where you think, this just doesn't work?
What, are you talking from when I introduce the business owners or when I'm interviewing clients?
When you're interviewing clients.
The only time it hasn't worked, and I can tell a story about this, and it took me a while early on to realize something was wrong, is when that person was giving a testimonial under duress. It was like, you owe me a favor and you're working for me as well, and you should give it. And when I went away, I was like, they said, oh, they should have said this and they should have said that. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And we did it again, but something felt really wrong. And then it turned out that person who was asking the testimonial was not a nice person.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't remember if it was a paid job at the time because I was doing a few favors, but it was like, there's something really wrong about it. And the more I heard about that person afterwards, the more it backed it up. That aside, no. If you've delivered and you've given good feedback and the person is kind enough to want to help you, do well, then there's usually not a problem.
Okay, excellent. And I say you've been in BNI. You're doing BNI remotely.
Yeah. Is
that remotely in Gozo, or is it remotely still in Yorkshire?
I'm the only BNI member in Gozo, so there couldn't be a BNI chapter in Gozo. I do it in Yorkshire.
Or is that an opportunity for a BNI chapter in Gozo?
It is not an opportunity for a BNI chapter in Gozo. Don't get me started. It's too much. Right. Everybody knows each other here anyway. I mean, that could still work, but it's not going to fall on me. I'm more useful to BNI in less administrative roles and more like teaching people how to use video.
Right. That makes sense. I'm still seeing the opportunity. There's definitely a chance there. I'm sure of it. Maybe
Come
not
live
a big
here.
one.
You do it.
Me too. Remotely. Yeah, from here. Why not?
Why not?
Do you miss the face-to-face at all then?
It's really interesting you say that because I had to go back for a funeral, sadly, to Leeds. And I thought I cannot. And this is as bonkers as it sounds. I went the day after their funeral, after the wake that finished at about midnight, right? And then went to BNI the next morning, there for about 6 a.m.
Wow.
And and then ended up having 3 meetings that same day before getting on a ride to London and, having Eid dinner at my aunt's house or my aunt's parents. So it was a bit, so to go back to your original question, what is it like comparatively? I had seen a camera on the meetings that made the room that I was walking into seem absolutely huge, right? I literally thought I was going to walk into the TARDIS, and it was a lot smaller. Wow. Everybody's a lot shorter. That's the first thing you notice. And I was there, and I met a bunch of people, and it was really lovely. And I do feel like if you can meet people that you care about once or twice a year, that has a ton of value. But it's not essential to meet them all the time. You know, I can understand. I mean, we've got a dual system. So we've got a hybrid where we're meeting in person and online at the same time. I think we're the only BNI chapter that does that consistently because we've got somebody who understands the tech really well. But there is a lot of chapters who do monthly get-togethers. You know, they do the Zoom and then they do hybrid. I can understand why that works for a lot of people because they need their social fix. They can't go too long without seeing with each other, but they don't need it all the time. And I won't lie, travel stresses me out. You know, anyway, if I go to Malta for the day, I get stressed out by the travel. Although I do like taking the ferry. I've got really lazy. I like my cafe. I like my routine. You know, travel is a big drain on my systems. And I won't lie, I do like the benefit of an added hour in bed, you know, which says a lot about my character, you know. But when I met people, it was really nice to see people again. You need that social time with people every now and then, especially if they're your clients. You know, if you have coffee with them, it's a meeting. If you break bread, it's history. You know, and if you have a late evening, it's legend. You know, God knows what happens if you go to the Liverpool director's box. But once it was done, I didn't need it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd done my meeting, I'd seen court with people. I didn't need to do it all the time. A lot of it was information exchange. You know, it's a lot of the time when you're passing data back and forth, you know, and sometimes you need that emotional connect. And a lot of the time, it actually makes me feel more friends with the people who are my clients, a lot of them, because rather than talk business, because we can do that anytime, we make our meeting just about get tea, talk rubbish, or talk life, whatever, and catch up about business another time. Business gets talked about, but not as intensely. If that makes any sense.
It does, yeah. Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And also the added bonus is that I meet people over here, and it's really something when somebody comes to my little island, you know, or comes to Malta. You really get to know people when they're out here because they haven't got the ball and chain around the leg.
So you're effectively living the laptop, if I can say it correctly, the laptop lifestyle, aren't you?
I get lumped in with remote workers, and I'm not a remote worker. I am a permanent resident here, and I'm quite happy about that. I didn't know I was going to end up like that. I mean, I ended up just leaving because of the COVID situation in the UK. And I thought I'd be back at some point, and I ended up being gone 10 months before I saw my family again. But a remote worker is a lot of the time somebody who hops from place to place, you know, and I'm not knocking it if that's your life, you know. Oh, I'm in Portugal this week. Oh, I'm going to be in Bali. Cool for you. I like it here. You know what I mean? At some point I'll go, well, I've seen all corners of the island, but then somebody will come along and it gets interesting again. You know, there's a lot I can do. And actually for an entrepreneur, there's a lot of distraction and disruption, or a lot of things to throw you off your stride. Nothing more than travel. And actually I have found ways to get rid of my time just as easily, but travel really messes with my headspace. So I'm quite comfortable. I'm quite cozy here.
Why do you think that travel bothers you so much?
I used to do it all the time. I used to go mad on it. I used to go down to London and I used to do 5 B9 meetings as a sub a week. Wow. I used to do more than anybody else, you know, and I used to do more one-to-ones than anybody else. I actually have that statistic. They put me down as 115 a year, one-to-ones in person. That was understated. I didn't log them because I didn't want a reputation. I ended up with the true number was about 250 in my first year.
Wow.
So I did the extreme, but I get very acutely aware of my time and what relationships are not necessarily yielding money, but are going somewhere, you know, whether I feel invested in them for one reason or not. And you get an idea of who's not worth, you know, trying to keep things going with, or who's got other things going on, you know, who are you just having a chin wag with, you know, who is actually going to do something interesting, you know, who do you want to actively support? You know, these things play an active role in when I have a one-to-one. If anybody requests it, I'll always have a one-to-one once. You never know. I was on a training event during COVID in the first year. And I met somebody at the end of it who had a picture of what looked like some island of the gods, right? And it turned out it was his back garden in Kefalonia.
Wow.
And we got chatting. I ended up getting invited to film at that Kefalonia. It was a paid working holiday. Can't knock it.
Just from a one-to-one.
Gorgeous island. They treated me really well. Just from a one-to-one. And sometimes I think we can say we get all our business from LinkedIn, right? Or we can say we get all our business from this. And you know it. You can, in theory, you could get a lot of business from SEO. But what it does, interestingly, being in a group of people who either have or their network has all these random problems that you didn't see coming, it keeps your ears to the ground as to what problems people are having and where there's chances to fix those problems. And then that has evolved my business quite a few times over.
Yeah.
And actually, if it not for being I wouldn't be on this island because I needed my papers sorting out, and the accountant, Richard Falzoni in Malta, sorted them out because I couldn't understand them. There's what's written and there's what is between the lines. And that's the middle of it is called bureaucracy. And I couldn't understand any of it. You have to be a local.
And that was done through BNI?
Yeah. And if not, I wouldn't have got them in on time. I'd have been in big trouble.
So yeah, that's a really good point about it, isn't it? A lot of people they join a networking group like BNI because they want the business. They want to grow their business, they want to make more money. Obviously that's why we do it. But you also get that support group that can help you with things that you just couldn't possibly do because they are there when you need them. The accountant is there to sort these problems out when you need them, and they are the expert in it. And you can trust them because you've known them a long time.
Yeah, exactly. I looked at it as a chance to level up. Like, I was an amateur when I went in that room. I'm still an amateur. But I'm a bit less of an amateur. I looked around the room and I thought, yeah, I could step up amongst these people.
How are you finding it? Because obviously you're there in Gozo. The rest of the chapter presumably is in Leeds.
One of them's in Mauritius.
Of course, one of them's in Mauritius. Naturally, I was going to suggest that. How are you able to find referrals for them when you're so many hundreds of miles away?
One thing that COVID brought forward is the need for people, or not need, but the chances for people who might have only done things in a local area to do things a lot further afield. My accountant in BNI was sorting out my papers whilst I'm sat at one of these cafe tables, and he's in England, right? And some people can only work on a local level. But then again, I had the branded workwear person in my chapter sending stuff to over here. I could refer the accountant to anybody in the country. I had a mortgage. I had an IFA in Malta, Scottish, funny enough, connected with the IFA in England because there was, technical challenges to solve. And a mortgage broker in my chapter because there's a lot of expats who have houses back home. A lot of people, though, broadly speaking, do stuff that the world could use. My graphic designer's in South Africa. She's brilliant. I refer her all over the place. What I could do applies to pretty much anybody. Maybe a bit more challenging if they don't speak English, but actually even that can be got around. And there's a copywriter who can work with people anywhere, States, Australia, doesn't matter. Yeah. One of my web designers is an Aussie, and I met her through BNI. So there's a lot of suppliers. And people you wouldn't think that are obvious, architects, as long as they know the regulations of that country, they could do things anywhere. At one point, for many years, we had a construction lawyer, and you would think he's the hardest person to refer. He was the easiest because they'd always meet somebody in that industry in another country who he could connect with and either invite to his webinar or translate English documents for, or check English, written documents for. A lot of the time it's helped that my network's fairly wide, and I would have a lot of conversations early on. And there was a guy called Derek Sivers who said, when you first start out, take every chance, talk to everybody, then narrow it down. So I did build my network pretty early on. But people come to us and ask for people come to us and ask for advice. So I get to find out what they're up to. That opens doors. You know, we don't announce cross-chapter referrals in my chapter. If we did, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, if we did, like, I'd be a lot more visible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do introduce people across the Atlantic quite a bit. So in terms of finding referrals, there's a lot of us who could open our eyes and see chances to do stuff that are way beyond our little local circle.
So when people complain that I find it difficult to pass referrals because I don't know that many people in my area, that's a nonsense, really, because the world is a lot smaller than it was before COVID.
There's a cheat sheet I use, and I've shown this. Some people use Connect. I use Google, and I'll go on to BNI Find a Member. And, you know, take an example, there's an architect, and he works with certain people in whatever sector. You know, I don't know if he works with a lot of surveyors, you know, and I appreciate one type of business owner will be providing a lot more referrals than the other way around, but still they're looking for quality, you know. So I will go on that list and I'll type in a profession in England and it'll bring me a list of 20 people with that profession. Now, some of them run very different types of businesses to ones that are elsewhere on the list, but why not have a one-to-one with them? There's, you know, somebody once pointed out to me, it's not necessarily about always the people in the room. Some of the best partnerships span chapters, span the globe. So why limit ourselves?
No, that's a great point. Our best referrals come from somebody in a different chapter. Our highest number and our best ones come from someone else. So that's very true. It's not just about the people in the room, but it transcends that for you as well, because you've put together your own group of marketers, haven't you? Your own BNI Dark Side, I believe it's called. Bit of a Star Wars reference in there.
Yeah, and that's not to suggest that anything naughty goes on in there. That was actually
no.
Yeah, that was originally a get-together of people I knew personally, you know, having met them during the pandemic on Zoom, saying, should we just talk this out? Because I can't be bothered sitting and moaning about this. And then at some point, somebody says, when are we meeting next time? And at one point, it just says, let's start a WhatsApp channel. And then I had my VA invite a bunch of people in every marketing end in US, Canada, and England, and Ireland to join. And some of them stuck around and formed their little sub-communities that I have, you know, or like alliances that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
You know, and that's sometimes the best of it is when it works without you. But it doesn't have to be strictly the case that you only work with one web designer. You know, and I think sometimes this is where labels fall short. You know, Andrew Gibson will say it's more about stories than labels. Not in those exact words, but you know what I mean. Like some web designers work with companies that spend X amount of money and need X amount of problem solving. And some people are magic at landing pages and they just want that. You know, and some people have a particular thing for accountants. You know, and certain niches suit people really well because they understand it. You know, somebody paid me the highest compliment I've had in a while the other day, and he says, you know, there's something, coaches, you seem to get it. You know, you understand, you put yourselves in our shoes. I could have paid him to say that. I wish I had, you know, but the more you work with a certain sector of people, and I know there's a slight danger in oversubscribing yourself to one industry. The pandemic has proved that. Events, you know, but
hospitality.
Still, yeah, but you know, a couple of them is not a bad thing. And if you empathize and understand and get one industry in particular and the language they use and the fears and concerns, then you've got an ace up your sleeve, whether you're the web designer in my chapter or the web designer in another chapter. If you completely and utterly get it, I mean, obviously, your understanding of that person's quality and standards carries a lot of weight too. It might be the winning factor, but still, you know, knowing a certain sector and its language helps.
Yeah, and I obviously I'm a member of that group as well, and I found it massively useful. I've had loads of help and advice from it. I've given help and advice on it, and I've had loads of podcast guests from it as well. So you get loads of marketers together in one group, and a lot of them do the same thing. You might expect there'd be arguments and fights, but it doesn't work that way, does it? It doesn't work that way.
It's healthy debates, which I do like, you know, and again, it kind of works on its own, doesn't it? I'm half the time I'm just a glorified admin assistant,
Hmm.
But I think with any group or community, you get out what you put in. If you're a constant contributor, and there's some people who really are good at that, then you get a reputation for it, and people come to you when there's a problem.
Hmm. So, what plans have you got for the future? Are you looking to stay in Gozo for the foreseeable?
Yeah, this is home. My biggest nightmare is being dragged home by something. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's not home anymore. I've lived here for, it feels bonkers to say it. I have been here now for 2.5 years.
Hmm.
Like, that time has really flown. I'm also extremely appreciative of the Maltese self-service. The fact I can literally walk in, take a ticket, grab a cup of tea from the cafe, wait 10 minutes, and if I'm lucky, my place is still there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things move at a slow pace. It's amazing the amount of stuff you don't need. You can't get this. A lot of white goods you have to kind of like get secondhand or get imported. It's amazing what you don't need, though. You know what I mean? I've kind of like not used a lot of stuff because I don't need it.
Like what? What sort of examples have you not used?
I'm trying to think of if let's say you go in. I'm trying to think of the best way, right? There's not an IKEA here, right?
Right.
And yes, there'd be an IKEA in theory would be useful. But if I had nothing to do, I'd probably go thinking, what am I going to do? I'm bored. I got some money. Let's go to IKEA. Or maybe I ain't got money. Let's go to IKEA anyway. Let's spend it. Do you know what I mean? It's got the essentials. You've got what you need here, but you don't, like sometimes you'd walk out of I think sometimes a shopping mall, a big one, is the worst thing you can have in a city, because all those things do is put people in debt because they walk out with stuff they didn't really need when they walked in. The people walk in to spend money, and that's kind of a nice thing, but at the same time, they don't have it. So I'm quite comfortable as long as there's a cup of tea in my hand, a laptop in front of us, or a decent book, or a decent place to walk, and see some views. I'm all right.
So it's almost like the capitalist monster hasn't quite hit Gozo yet.
Oh, we've got Starbucks, we've got Mackie D's, and I'm sure that over time there'll be one or two more. But actually, most bars around here and cafes are all like one owner. No, let me rephrase that. It might be like one owner and they have a shop here and something that does something different over there. There's a couple of multiple business owners, entrepreneurs, but yeah, the conglomerates haven't taken over.
It sounds pretty idyllic.
I'm sure everything has its issues, but in terms of if you list like a bunch of pros and cons, it kind of balances out quite well. A lot of people miss this place pretty bad when they leave, for any length of time. After about 3 days in England, I'll be, be glad to see my family and I will meet up with them. But at the same time, I'm not in my element here. Do you know what I mean?
And I've not been personally. How big is the island?
67 square kilometers.
So you could could you walk across the whole island in a day?
Oh yeah, easy. You could drive from one end to the other in the maximum 25 minutes without bad traffic.
Wow.
That's the furthest 2 points.
Wow. So presumably you've explored pretty much all of it by now.
No, something, depends. There's always another pizzeria to try, I'm sure. But everybody knows where the best one is, or at least with the one with the best view.
And what is that view?
There's a place called Francesco's Special Pizzeria. They make really good pizza, but the view is incredible. And it's the only. My sister's 16 and she was 15 at the time when she first saw it, and it's the only thing that stops a teenager short of words.
Wow. Is that good?
That's pretty good. I'll send you a photograph sometime.
I'd appreciate that. Is that fantastic?
To be honest, I keep a spare room, and I got a spare room early on, just because of the space. But one of the bonuses and one of the things I'm really grateful for is that I can be the host. I used to be the guy crashing on everybody's couch, and a bit of a burden. And now, a lot of the time, a lot of B&I members or friends, you need to get out of the country, come over. It's nice to give people a bit of a break from the drama.
So, why were you crashing on people's couches?
What the time to do B&I meetings in London? You know, a lot of the time I was a struggling entrepreneur, didn't have somewhere.
Right. So, how long ago was that?
Well, I've been at it since I left university, and it probably between, I don't know, like 2018 late, all the way back to 2011. It was 2010 even. It was a struggle.
So
a lot of rough stuff happened.
With university, was that film?
Yeah.
And what was it? Because obviously I've been to film school as well, as you know. What was it? Your plan was, your dream?
Go out and be the next Kubrick, or like emulate my heroes, play around as Kurosawa, and at some point I will do that. And I don't think there are many people now, even well-known directors, who are not busy between shoots making commercials. And I don't care how expensive that commercial is. If you're making a commercial, whether you're a Hollywood director or not, you've got a side job. So, I don't mind it having a side hustle. But I say that in a positive way. Everyone's got, most people have got something else going on, and it depends on the argument which way you think this is my main thing or not. I enjoy it. I love it. I get to help people who otherwise don't get taken seriously enough.
Yeah, because of course even Ridley Scott, director of Blade Runner and Alien, made TV commercials.
He did, and we can be really shallow. As people, we can look at somebody and go, "I'm not working with them. They're nuts. They're eccentric. I don't like them." Until we see the results, we go, "Hey, just take my money." Right? There's a lot of people who, whatever reason, they don't have the right accent, they don't have the right background, they don't talk a certain way, they're introverts rather than extroverts. They struggle, or maybe they do well. Maybe they've done really well. They're just not doing as well as they should do. Or maybe they're working with people who do their editing a lot of the time, rather than bring energy to the table, rather than drain it like vampires. And it's a lot of fun helping those people because they finally get validated and they see how much people appreciate them. Like when somebody's leaving the pens at Russell Crowe's table.
I mean, you mentioned earlier how you see it as an opportunity to stand up and talk in front of 25 people.
Yeah.
But does that mean that you class yourself as an extrovert rather than an introvert?
No, it's an introvert who throws himself out of his comfort zone. And I wouldn't even say that I've done it enough times. When I was at the Cannes Festival, time and time again, I would always be the guy who said weird stuff. I still am the guy who says weird stuff without realizing it. And people would walk away. And I would think, I've got to make sure they don't walk away. Otherwise, no one will talk to us. I'll end up lonely and I'll die early, which is what happens to people who are isolated and on the spectrum. So, most people on the spectrum don't have jobs. That's why half of them become entrepreneurs, if they can.
Yeah.
So you make a habit of chucking yourself at it. And sometimes it's a disaster. Sometimes it's not, but eventually you learn how to read people. That's how I got into this. I could read people and get them to open up and share what was in their mind. And that's actually the secret half the time, getting them to talk. I don't have to do most of it.
And obviously you're on the spectrum. It's Asperger's, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Does that make it difficult, or did it make it difficult going to a networking meeting and having to talk to people that you don't know?
Done it enough times. I mean, technically challenging, but when you do it enough times, you realize that you're not going to be thrown out and hunted by saber-toothed tigers, and not cast out of the tribe. The only way you get cast out of the tribe is if you put a really bad tweet up.
That sounds like you're talking from experience.
No, I've seen it enough times, though. It's a joke. Okay. I'm being humorous.
Sorry.
You put a bad tweet out, you lose your career. But other than that, most of the time, people are fine.
Yeah. No, you're right. I've seen people do that, actually. Yeah, there was a schoolgirl joined the police as a, what was it? Going off topic a little bit here. Joined the police as a youth advisor. And then as soon as she was announced as it, they checked her history on Twitter, went back 4 or 5 years to when she was about 13, 14, and found she'd put out something either racist or homophobic, and immediately she was sacked as the youth advisor.
It's a different time now, isn't it?
Yeah.
If everybody, everybody in the boomer era could, or Gen X, could be held to account for every nasty thing they said as a teenager. There was a permanent record of it. My days. But now, people don't say it in public because they're not used to talking to each other as much in person. So they write it, and there's a record.
Yes, even if you delete it, it's still there.
Oh yeah. What is going on with SEO? What's your take on it?
The big problem.
I don't even know if there is one yet. You tell me.
There is. Yeah, Google announced straight after a big conference in April, end of April, that Google featured snippets, which are the boxes at the top of Google for specific search results that get you a lot of traffic. It's going to start replacing those with generative AI.
Okay.
So in other words, where typically we've got clients at the moment, for example, we've got one client that's a carpet fitter. Yep. They get tens of thousands of visits to their website each year for a specific question about carpets in a rental property. Okay. If Google does what it says it's going to do, it's going to get rid of that, and it's going to answer the question using AI at the top of Google so that people don't go to the website. Google gives them the answer on the fly. So Google's going to keep people on Google and not send them to websites.
Curious. It feels like it's going to go in the direction that if you want a specific service, if you want literally somebody to go get carpets or get a carpet fit, then you go to the website. If you want a question answered, you go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you think video content's coming into that?
Google's always done a lot with video and always prioritized it because of YouTube. And I think that will continue because Google's fine to drive traffic to YouTube because it owns it and it earns a lot of advertising revenue from it. So it could be better for video content.
It's an interesting one because I've got some. We should do a reverse sometime, proper, but a full length one. But it's interesting because I have a feeling that they're putting more video content on my blogs. Text will be nice, but video content will be worth something if people do visit it. Pulling out the text from the videos will be also worth something. And it's an it's a curious one because the value of text content is not feeling as strong as it used to be. I don't know if I'm wrong about this. So what people they're going to drive so more traffic to websites that have video on it.
Well,
good video.
One of the problems that has already started happening is that a lot of businesses are seeing that their traffic from Google is reducing. It's been reducing year on year, but their rankings aren't dropping. And the reason is because people are searching in a different way. So, for example, you don't go to Google as such anymore. If you're looking for new garden furniture, you used to Google garden furniture, whereas that's going down and down and down because people are using things like Pinterest and TikTok and other types of social media to search for this and to find the products. So if you're not using these, and video content plays a huge part in that, then you are going to lose out on traffic and sales, even though your Google rankings are unaffected.
So what does this mean for local carpet fitter where you need somebody to come out to your house and do some work?
I would say social media and video is going to become even more important.
Really?
Yeah.
Because let's say TikTok, people search for like generic terms, like AI video, or AI music production, but never AI music production leads, or AI or carpet fitters leads. I never see people using those terms. It's more like broad educational topics.
It is. But the way TikTok will work is it's less about what they search for and more about what TikTok knows you want to see.
Well, do you know what's funny is I'm getting a load of stuff from TikTok that I really don't like. I was getting sent videos by Idi Amin talking about Jewish people. But what? They kept sending me them. Or sending stuff about, what's the word? Those like Jordan Peterson, macho man style This is how the woman should really be, and you should be crying your tears because you've lived your. Do you know what I mean? That's the stuff I'm thinking. Block this. Block this. Why am I keep seeing these videos? Do you know what I mean?
That's a little weird. I'm surprised at that. I'm surprised at that because with me, the algorithm works really well, and it is giving me what I want. I
think I watched one or two of them because I wanted to know what the guy was getting at, and then you reveal it, and you go, "Well, this is a bit chauvinistic." Right. Away with you. But because I watched it, it keeps sending them.
Yeah. That might be the problem.
You can't undo your history. So much, which is really crass.
Yeah.
Or you can't eliminate. You can't tell the TikTok to not send you stuff you don't like. No, it's an interesting one. I mean, ironically, one of the reasons I appreciate being I is because challenges are going to happen, and you need think tanks. Essentially, BNI is a think tank source. You pull a bunch of people on a specialism and you say what we're going to do about what we're doing, or how we're going to figure this out. And there are going to be stuff thrown at us where I need other people I need other opinions. What do you think of this? Where do I go get this? There's web related stuff all the time on that. And there are web forums, but I think when you put into the membership, you essentially say, I'm buying into an idea of how people should be supporting each other in business. I buy into the idea of community. And it's whatever is going else that goes on there, at least it's got that with the intent of people, a lot of them in the room. So a lot of the good ideas I've had have because people have thrown problems at us to deal with, or they've had requests, or they've needed something figuring out.
Yeah.
And same with Midjourney, I was struggling with that. So yeah, anyway, that's me waffling on. It's interesting to get those opinions on SEO.
From what you mentioned about TikTok, then it's showing you videos you don't want. Twitter does the same sort of thing. Twitter used to default to, when you loaded the app, what you follow, but now it defaults to what it wants to push to you, and you have to change the setting to what you follow each time. But it doesn't necessarily push to you things that it knows you agree with. It pushes things it knows you're going to interact with. So I'm getting loads of like Nigel Farage, Donald Trump, Katie Hopkins crap, because it knows I'm going to end up getting into an argument with people about it.
A lot of, and I mean this in the nicest way, so I'm going to get a slap to the head here, but a lot of weak-minded people will get influenced by political content. Notice I'm not putting a label down here, and the reason that happens a lot of the time is not because of the strength of the argument, but the basic way the argument has been put and the number of times it's been repeated. Oh, I didn't believe this. But, after a while, I realized that was true. And actually, that's just like somebody, meeting a new partner and then disappearing from all their mates. Because the partner has said, your mates are terrible, they're losers, you don't want to be near them, don't like them. And then the friend, and I've seen this more than once, gets isolated from all his other friends or her other friends because of the partner. And they start believing what they're told. Not because it's any clever, what's been said, or any true. It's just because it's been beaten over their heads repeatedly. Same with arguments and videos online. And I think that's a fairly politically neutral thing to say.
It is. But with the stuff online, it's not done by accident. It's done deliberately.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the fact that Elon Musk now controls Twitter, he is essentially able to use it for his own political agenda.
Somebody once said, again, I'm not going to label any particular side here, that what one group of people wants is not freedom of speech. It's that their speech is the one that dominates. And they want it so they're the only ones that get to say anything. And they will go for that by any means necessary. Any means necessary. Because to that group of people, the winners dictate history.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter how shameless a route is taken to get that. If they win, that's all that matters. Because then they have power. But there's no such thing as what's decent. There's no such thing as shame. There is just who controls. Wait, you know, some people. I remember once there was a political character, and this character is like an absolute cartoon. And I won't say it, the name of it, so that people identify which way I'm going with this. And like that person was a point of parody, right? And it's probably not the one you're thinking of straight away. And somebody pointed out, yeah, they might look like a parody, but whilst we're laughing at them, all their ideas are getting under the table.
Yeah.
You know, all their ideas, they've, you know, whilst we're staring, you know, distracted laughing at them, they've managed to get a seat at a table they don't belong at.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, what a cheerful way to...
been legitimised. You know, yeah, that is quite cheerful. Thanks, Tommy. I was feeling all upbeat until then. You mentioned you wanted to be, you know, fulfill your heroes or copy your heroes and be like Kubrick. And you still plan on doing that. Would Gozo play a part in that? Because what I can see behind you, it looks an absolutely beautiful setting and a visual inspiration.
I'd have to be indiscreet because I wouldn't want to be too known for it, if you know what I mean. People like, you know, people know me as the laptop guy around here, you know. Right. But you can be discreet. But yes, the locations around here are bonkers. That's one of the reasons people like coming here. You know, people will go to Malta and then they'll spend 2 hours coming here and coming back to see this place and not seeing all of it. It is, you get film crews around here quite a bit. I don't think this place has been used anywhere near enough. But then again, it's not a bad thing. You know, this place gets plenty of tourists.
Yeah. So have you got a passion idea that you're going to do, or is it something you've not thought of yet?
Do you know what? I scribble things down, and I have writers that I go back and forth with, but I like to slay each dragon at its own pace. Do you know what I mean? So I like to feel like I've got a grip to a degree on the business side of things, and it's going in where I want, and focus all my energy on that, or a lot of it, and then focus on leisure, because I do genuinely think that your leisure work influences your business work.
Well, it does generally look like you're living your best life there. I'm more than slightly jealous. I'm very jealous, actually.
Oh, don't mind me. I'll find something to moan about. I always do.
That's the Yorkshire in you.
Isn't it just?
Okay. We're about running out of time now, Tommy.
Okay.
But one final thing I want to ask is, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to work with you, what's the best way they can contact you? My name's a Google whack. If you type it in, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm addicted. I can't leave the phone alone, so you'll get me. And are you still looking for other people in marketing to join your marketing WhatsApp group? Yeah, I am. I've noticed that some people come and some people go, and maybe it depends on whether they have the time or not, or, you know, whether they have the focus. But I think it's very community driven now. You know, there is, like, after maybe about half a year to a year, you started seeing people who liked hanging out with each other and being supportive. And some people, like anybody who comes to any meeting, you know, there's givers and there's takers. And I think it really worked quite well for the givers. No, that's a very good point. Very good thing to end on there. Yeah. Thank you very much, Tommy. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you. A pleasure seeing the scenery behind you as well and the life going by. Oh, yeah. Yeah, somebody's winding that from the side. Thanks, Tommy.